Call this inland wetlands meeting to order right now. It's 6:59 p.m. and 7 p.m. I'm sorry. And the first order of business is call to order. We did that. Approval of minutes for the February 15th meeting. Do I got a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Joe, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, go ahead, sir.
How are you guys?
You're up next. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me. My name is Frank Hennigan. I own a contracting business called Hennigan Services. It's a mother company that holds three businesses, three LLCs that are in the water management business. We own Connecticut Gutter, Connecticut Stormwater Authority, and Greenwich Roofs. We've been in business 20 years. We were founded right down the street in Milford. Connecticut Gutter was founded in 2003 in Milford. We've actually done a number of jobs for the city of Stratford over the years. I'm here to represent Connecticut Stormwater Authority, and that's a business my wife and I founded 4 years ago after doing a decade and a half of drainage work related to the rain gutter business. I just want to give you a little backstory on who we are before I get into it, but I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet. I know what you guys are after, and I have a lot of insight to give you. So just to give you an idea, the stormwater business is very important in the Greenwich area. They sort of spearhead things for the state of Connecticut as far as direction for maintenance, how to police that, and the large-scale homes, for the most part, really command very elaborate systems. So that business is very intricate and high volume in that area. So we're down that way. Our business, the Connecticut Stormwater Authority business, was bolstered by two of my very best friends. One is an attorney in Greenwich, Casey O'Donnell. All he does is land use law, and he specializes in wetlands. And then Frank Patisse, who was a senior civil engineer, at the time was with the town of Greenwich. He co-wrote the stormwater manual for the town of Greenwich. He has a very highfalutin title now, and he is currently the Transportation, Traffic, and Parking Bureau Chief for the city of Stratford. So he's got a big job. Frank was very active in stormwater. Went to high school with Frank. I'm Frank as well. We went to college together. So the three of us sort of spearheaded this stormwater initiative. Connecticut Stormwater Authority is the only, and to this day, the first and the only to this day, certified installer and certified maintenance provider of the Coltech stormwater product line. The reason being is we are very scientific with our approach to stormwater. Our design build is bar none, and we're very, very exacting with our details. We're very meticulous with our installs. That being said, Coltech identified us as an authority, gave us those designations, and to this day we remain the only company in the world that has the Coltech stamp. That being said, we do design build, we do maintenance, we do inspections, anything related to drainage, we're a part of. The town of Greenwich in particular they police this. So if you have a system in the ground, if the building department gives you a permit and that permit requires drainage, they also make you sign a declaration. That declaration says in part, I know I have a stormwater system, I know I just put it in the ground, I know I'm responsible to maintain that system, and I understand every 5 years I'm going to have a certified state of Connecticut civil engineer inspect that system and then write a report, stamp that report with a seal, and submit it to the town. They take it up a notch for wetlands outside of standard building permits. Wetlands has a more stringent approach, and they require those reports to be submitted. The reports that are on declaration that are not wetlands related, they need to be created, but the homeowner is responsible to sit on it and provide it when asked for it. The town of Greenwich in the last 2 years, and this is the Board of Realtors for the town of Greenwich, has escalated things where now there cannot be a home sale unless the reports are provided at closing. So they're taking it very serious, and they're pushing off sales based on, if a report was never generated or they have no history on maintenance, it'll hold up a transaction. That being said, we do a ton of these inspections. Frank Patisse is the senior civil engineer that does all of the reporting. The inspections basically involve removing downspouts on any of the roof drainage that's going underground, going into any catch basins, going into any yard drains, any trench drains, any kind of drainage feature that's taking water, collecting it, and sending it into the Cultec chambers. We're sending cameras, very expensive drain equipment, to go in and inspect, capture video. We record all of that video. We create unique videos per drainage feature. We label them. We do our own assessment. We do a diagram. A lot of times what we find is the as-built drawings that dictate what was supposed to be installed and what was signed off by the town as going in the ground don't line up with what we actually find underground. It's very hard for engineering departments, doesn't matter what town, to get out on site during construction and actually police and identify exactly what's going in the ground. What they're doing now is what's called certification by the engineers, and the engineer essentially signs off and rubber stamps and certifies that the system went in as per plan. But what we find is oftentimes they do not. Doesn't mean they don't work, doesn't mean they're not functional, they're just not per as-built drawings. They're not per what was approved. So that's problematic. But just to give you the big picture on what's going on in the ground and how it's getting put together and what we could unearth with our cameras, we basically locate all these pipes and then make our own diagram that plots where things live in the ground. And if you look at it versus the as-built drawings, in many cases, they don't align. That being said, what I'm here to do is, by my understanding, is to give you a crash course in 20 minutes or so on how these chambers work, whether they require maintenance, what that maintenance looks like, good, bad, ugly, and otherwise. And so let me just dive right into it. What I brought with me is a little mock-up to scale of a chamber. There's a few different versions of chambers per model. This happens to be a 330 XL HD. The bulk of our work is residential, although we do quite a bit of commercial. But residentially, our preference is this 330 XL HD model. The chamber, just to give you perspective, in real life is 4.5 feet wide, it's 30.5 inches tall, and it's 8.5 feet long. These interlock. You could use them as standalone. Now, this particular version is called an I model. It's an intermediate chamber. So this could be used to daisy chain multiple chambers and create what they call a row. So they have one wall that is open and one solid wall. The R model, which is the starter model, has two solid walls. So if you could imagine using it as like a dry well, it captures the water and houses it. And I'm going to explain to you, if you open up the pamphlet I gave you, there are 8 pages stapled together. I have a copy here myself. I'm going to walk you through that. First thing I wanted to bring to your attention was that cross-section diagram on the bottom of page 1. This one here. What you're looking at is the butt end of 3 chambers, each of those chambers representing what we call a row. This could be 100 feet long per row. You're looking at, again, the butt end of a chamber. What I want you to notice is the components that make up a system. A system is not just this chamber. There's a lot of components that go into a system to build a system properly and to have each of these parts and pieces working interchangeably, collectively, to create what we call a stormwater system. Below the chambers, now this is in black and white, but if you could see, there's stone. It's that piece of meat below the chambers that has like almost like a woolen weave to it, to the pattern that they're using in this illustration. That's a stone bed, that's a stone base. If you don't have a stone base, you're starting off very, very poorly. When we dig a trench to put these chambers in, the soil quality is very important. You may or may not have soil that can accept water. For instance, clays. Down in Greenwich, on the shoreline, there's a lot of properties that are just all clay. We'll dig and dig, it literally is just a big, heavy chunk of clay. Then all of a sudden we get down 5 feet and we'll hit sand. That's good news. Sand accepts water. But what accepts water the best is stone. And it's got to be a particular type of stone. It's what we call drainage stone. The size of that stone is 1.25 to 1.5 inches, and if you have too large of stone or too small of stone, like a gravel, you have trouble. In the case of gravel, it packs really tightly. If it packs tightly, it doesn't let water through. Drainage stone at 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, it's just the right size where each stone abuts the other but lets water pass through it like a sieve. So we use that stone as a base. We generally try to get 12 inches of base. That in of itself has storage capacity for water, but more importantly, it acts as, it creates the ability for that water that we send into the chambers to recharge or infiltrate back into the earth. The concept behind these chambers, as you see, they're open bottomed, is to not hold the water. We're not trying to create a tank or a housing scenario that's holding water. What we're trying to create is infiltration. So we send the water into these chambers, and the open bottom lets them directly dump into that stone base and then ideally inject back into the earth. If the water table is very high, it won't accept the water. These chambers might hold water for a little bit of time, but they slowly drain and recharge back into the earth as the earth chooses to accept it. That being said, this open space, and this is why this is shaped in an arch, it gives it a ton of structural integrity. This is H20 rated. That means you could drive a car over it. So these arches create this formidable space and void in the ground that the stone doesn't fill up. So in a surge, let's say you're sending roof runoff to these chambers, whatever a big building like this, you have massive gutters, massive downspouts. Your watershed is based on your square footage and your slope, and we do calculations. Building this size will shed a high magnitude of water. You need a ton of chambers to give you this volume so that in a surge you have the ability to accept this capacity of water before the earth is willing to accept it. So the calculations on how many chambers are needed is critical. Okay, so we take the stone, we also do a cover. After these chambers go down, we do a 6-inch cover or better of stone. Again, more storage capacity. It gives us strength. The stone spreads evenly between the chambers to work in conjunction with this engineered arch to pack tight and give it structural integrity. Then we come in and we wrap everything. Before we even start putting anything into the trench, we use a very high quality geotextile fabric. It's non-woven, it's expensive, it's heavy duty. This is not a weed liner that you would go buy at Home Depot. This is a very professional, gigantic roll of material that contractors that do drainage know where to buy. You can't just go into a normal supply house. You go to a real technical supply house that sells this stuff. Where I find these systems are flawed the most is in that fabric I just described. Most of these smaller landscape contractors are using that weed blocker. Really thin, inexpensive stuff that disintegrates underground. Okay, it just doesn't hold up after 12, 16 months. It starts to disintegrate. Once it disintegrates, the system is completely fouled and void. Why is it void? All the dirt around it now has the ability to push into the system. What that fabric is doing is keeping all that drainage stone immaculately clean, and it's keeping the chambers from taking on any kind of dirt or silts or anything being sent down those gutters and getting impacted. You want everything inside these chambers to be clean. The only thing you want in there is water. So how do we achieve that? One is, of course, by building this system and wrapping it in this expensive fabric and using the proper drainage stone. But then outside of that, outside of this, what we call a gallery, our intakes, our main inflow pipes need to have features on them to capture solids and to filter out anything that might be coming down into these chambers. So if you turn to page 2 on the handout, what I've shown you is an illustration, and it's a little pixelated because I increased the size when I had it copied. What this is showing you is a very rudimentary system. This I almost use conceptually, and I'll make a great explanation for what you guys are after today with this illustration. But honestly, I see this quite often being executed exactly like this. And what you're looking at is, at the corner of the garage, you see a downspout and a gutter. And what they're doing is collecting the roof runoff from the roof, putting it into a gutter, sending it down a downspout. That downspout, as you can see, is tied into a ground drain. That ground drain then, in part, is tied into this Coltec chamber. So theoretically, that's all well and good. It could work. You're sending all the roof runoff right into this chamber. Should do the trick. And in some cases, it can and it will. But what we're doing is also sending in anything that might get inside that gutter. So what we find is birds nest in gutters quite often. Leaves, obviously, twigs, sticks, anything that might get inside your gutter that normally is a nuisance for you at your home is going to also, by force and hydrostatic pressure, get shoved down that downspout, down the elbows, down the pipe, and eventually make its way into the chamber. Now what happens when it gets inside the chamber? It starts piling up on this drainage stone at the base of this chamber. If it piles up enough and it spreads, and over time it will, you'll get a slimy layer of leaves, you'll get sticks and twigs and anything else that might get itself inside this chamber. The minute all those stones at the base are covered up in a flash flood or when you need that chamber to infiltrate the most, that'll actually bind up. And just like it clogs your gutter on the roof, it's going to clog this chamber, and now the water cannot penetrate the stone. So these things will foul. So how do we get around this, right? This design is flawed. It just sends the water directly into the chamber. If you turn the page, the next design is a little bit more elaborate. And what we see is the water comes off the same roof, the same gutter, down the downspout into that ground drain, and then it hits that black box, okay? And then from the black box on the other side, we see another outflow pipe, and then that goes underground. And this illustration of the chamber is black instead of blue. But it is a Coltech chamber. That's another 330 XLHD. But what is that black box? Okay, that black box is called a Coltech T80 storm filter. It's used residentially. What it does is allow for any of those solids I just explained to you coming off the roof, or maybe it's a grate in the driveway that also ties into this drain. And that grate, if you've ever seen a catch basin on a driveway, those things fill up with leaves. They get clogged and dirty and mucky. All of those solids have the ability to travel down that inflow pipe and hit this black box. But the minute they do, they drop. And they sink to the bottom of that black box. And then the only thing going out of that outflow pipe at that point is water, clean water. So now at that point, we've created this baffle that allows us to capture solids and send those solids into send the solids to the floor, and then fresh water is expelled out. If you could see on top of that black box, there's a riser, what we call a riser. And there's a lid, that round lid, and it's at the grade of the lawn. What that gives us is the ability to maintain these T80 storm filters. My guys go out once a year, we take that lid off, and we literally will drop a shop vac, or we have vacuum trailers, heavy-duty equipment. But in most cases, if it's on the lawn, we're not bringing that heavy-duty 600-gallon machine onto the lawn. We're going to use a shop vac. And we're just going to suck out those solids, put the lid back on, and they're in business. We're maintaining that system. If that T80 goes, by the way, in the middle of that T80, the illustration doesn't show it, but there's a frame. There's a stainless steel frame that expands and opens up, and wrapped around that frame is what is very similar to a high-quality lawn chair. Have you ever seen a woven lawn chair that almost has like a plasticky coating on the fabric? It's waterproof, it's UV resistant. That is also a great screen. It's a great form of mesh. So that screen will stop those solids in their tracks. Half the box will fill up with solids. Like anything, even with gutters, with gutter covers, if left unmaintained, even a really high-quality gutter cover needs to be cleaned off, because it'll cake up and it'll hold solids and it'll be rendered useless. Same thing with that screen in that T80. You can't just throw it in the ground and call it a day. That screen has to be shaken out every once in a while, but if we're on top of maintenance, we don't even have to remove the screen. We could just suck up all those solids before they start caking up on the screen and get out of there, and job well done. If you turn the page, what I've shown you here, this is a trench. These are my guys working here. This job happened to be in Westport. And we have a gallery of chambers. I don't know, this gallery maybe had 10 of these chambers. And in the forefront of the photo, closest to us, you could see what that T80 filter looks like in real life, and it has a riser on it. And if you could just kind of look at the lawn on the left, it's flush in line with that lid. We backfill this trench, obviously, after we finish building the system, and we make sure everything is flush with the lid of that riser, and now we have something that's serviceable. You turn a page again. What I'm showing you here, this system is in New Canaan. This system happened to go in under somebody's driveway. Now this house, if you could see the garage door is open. This house had no trench drain across the threshold of the garage doors, and it happens to be, the house is downhill. So the water was rushing off the street, rushing down the driveway, and running right underneath this lady's garage doors, flooded the basement twice in 1 year. She called us in, we engineered this. The only place to put the water without putting a pump, we could have built a pump chamber and just kept pumping the water out, but then we had other contentions. Where do we send the water with the pump? And then we have, redundancy of the pump. Do we put 2 pumps in? Pumps burn out. Pumps fail you at the worst time. So our decision collectively was to put the water under the driveway in chambers. Now, if you look where that orange cone is, at the back right corner of the trench, you'll see a little cutout area. That black liner, that's that geotextile fabric I was talking about. That fabric is covering up this catch basin we installed, but you could see right behind the catch basin that cast iron square lid with grate that's leaning against that stone wall. Right in that corner there is a catch basin. We installed the catch basin there so that we weren't just sending water directly into the chambers. We created a baffle. Again, much like that T80, because this is under asphalt and heavy duty, maybe the garbage trucks are coming in and out of that driveway, we needed something a little bit more formidable to catch solids. So what we did was use a catch basin, and there's ways to baffle solids using just pipe elbows. You turn the page, you'll see the end result of this project. This is right after we had rolled out the new asphalt, but you see the catch basin grate in place. Inside that basin is our maintenance point. Okay, that's what we go into twice a year, and we lift that grate up, and we clean out all the solids in that chamber before it fills up so much so that it starts spilling into our outflow pipe and fouling our Coltech chambers. If you turn again, this is a commercial industrial application. Again, this is a mock-up. This would be under a supermarket parking lot. We service one actually all the time. There's a microprocessor company that's booming in Wilton, Connecticut, ASML. They have a gallery that's probably 4 times the size of this. What I want to call to your attention is how it's done commercially, because again, I don't know what you're up against here. Maybe it's residential or pseudo-residential applications, but maybe it's also commercial. I wanted to talk a little bit about commercial and how it works in that case. What the stormwater chamber manufacturers, Coltech included, what their strategy is, and I've seen it implemented by the engineers, and I've been out doing the maintenance. If you see those rows of chambers in this illustration, do you see the one on the far left? It's black. All the other rows are blue. Why that row is black is they've created what they call a separator row. And what they do is use that row as a sacrificial lamb, so to say, and they wrap that row in that geotextile fabric that we also line the entire trench with. So all of the water from the street, in this case the parking lot, gets captured, gets sent underground, and it first enters this row. Now just conceptually, if we go back to the original, you don't have to jump, but that first page I kind of showed you those cross sections and the diagrams of how these chambers work. I don't fill this chamber up all the way and then the water spreads and then goes to the next chamber and then the next chamber. What happens is the water dumps into the floor, which the chamber's open, starts filling up that stone. When it starts filling up that stone base, it spreads evenly. So if I have 100 rows of these chambers, the water first spreads evenly, fills the whole base of that trench. Then it starts to all rise continuously. And then all these chambers fill up simultaneously, generally evenly. They're all perforated too. There's little holes in the sidewalls. I could pass this around so you could have a look at one of these. But basically, the water rises consistently across all of these rows. If we send the water in first to that separator row that's covered in that black fabric, what that does is act as like a sieve, a screen, a filter. And all the water fills that chamber first, and now the floor, of course, as well has this liner. So all of the solids or anything that makes its way into this separator row is trapped in this separator row. It's sacrificial. The only thing that gets out of that row is clean water. So all these other rows and all that drainage stone is filling up with clean water, not a problem. The problem comes in when we say, okay, what happens with, now even the manufacturers call me because I'm the maintenance guy, right? We're putting on safety gear and doing confined space entries and sending guys in manholes. And they come to me and say, Frank, what do you see in there? What do you run into? Turn the page on the handout. I actually took this photo myself. I had a hard hat on, and I was 6 feet underground under a parking lot, and I'm in a separator row. And out on the other side of that stick, that twig, you see that hump? Those are silts, okay? Those silts made their way into the catch basins on the parking lot, and then they were floating in the water enough, they hadn't settled yet, or the water was stirred up because it was in the middle of a storm, and all these silts made their way into that separator row. And then they start to just build up. If you're lucky, it's a nice fine silty sand. In other cases, you could have a Barbie doll, soda bottles, all kinds of debris in there, anything that might have bypassed the grates on the sewers. And that's what you get in these separator rows. I will tell you, and I have all the equipment, you can't clean these separator rows out. So what's critical, and it's part of our design, and this is why we have the status with Coltec that we do, is everything we do as far as creating and designing a system, we create a maintenance point. It's just common sense. So whether it's an elaborate array of one catch basin fills, and then what we call a baffle box, then it spills into the next solid lid box, what we call a distribution box. As long as we have some way to get in this system and catch the solids before they enter the chambers, we're in good shape. I could warranty the system. I know I could keep out solids and make those chambers last a very long time. In the case of the second page that I showed you, if you're sending water directly into these Coltec chambers, there's no way for me to clean it out. I cannot get inside that Coltec chamber. What you don't see here is what we call an observation port, and that's a pipe that sticks directly out of the top of these chambers, and it goes up to grade. We generally go 5.5 feet down with these chambers, 12-inch base. So now the bottom of this is at 4.5 feet, then I'm up 30.5 inches. So I have about 2 feet, 3 feet from grade to the top of this chamber. So I have a piece of pipe, 6-inch pipe, this big. And what that observation port is made for is for us to get in either with a stick, like you see like they do at gas stations to measure how much gas they have in a underground gas tank. That's a rudimentary way. How wet does my stick get? Or we send one of our cameras in there. And what we want to do is we're studying infiltration. So if I put a system in and I know the soil quality wasn't that great, I might want to check after a heavy storm. Or if I'm jumping on a job that I didn't install and the customer, 50% of our work is fixing badly done jobs. So step one is, well, let's see what we have here. You're right, your yard is wet, and you tell me you have stormwater chambers. Why is it wet? So we'll send cameras in, we'll come in that inflow pipe, chambers filled with water. Why is it filled with water? Well, it could be a number of reasons. One, high water table. Two, soil quality is poor, it's full of clays, the water has nowhere to go. It just keeps filling and filling until we reach capacity. Three, filter fabric is garbage. It's not keeping out dirt. All that dirt is getting in that stone. The stone gets dirty. Once it gets dirty, it just starts holding water. Water can't pass through it anymore. Four, system's undersized, not enough chambers. There's a number of reasons, but that observation port is not big enough, not suitable to clean this. Problem is I have this loose stone base. So how do I vacuum it? How do I clean it? Even if I have this giant manhole on these commercial jobs, and I have a big vacuum trailer, and I have 20, 30 feet of hose, and I have high CFM vacuum, and I could suck 10 gallons of water into like this, I have all this loose stone that I want. That's my stone base. I can't start sucking all this gravel out of there to throwing the baby out with the bathwater to get the solids out. It becomes impossible. So the way to do it is capture everything on the front side. Don't let it into the chambers. Again, and I'm basically through my presentation, but in summary, I'd say 50 to 60% of our business is fixing poorly done jobs. And it's usually the rubber stamp jobs where the site excavator, the site work contractor that maybe poured the foundation, dug the foundation, he's already there with machines. So he gets hired to lay the drainage. But he's just kind of slapping it together. He doesn't put positive pitch on the pipes. He doesn't really know what he's doing with these. He cuts corners on the stone. He gets gravel that packs too tight. He's using 3/8 gravel instead of 1.25 inch drainage stone. He doesn't use the right fabric. He doesn't know where to buy it. And all these little things add up, and then we're out 50, 60% of the time. We go in with a camera. Within 30 minutes, I could tell you what happened, what went wrong. And oftentimes, even that photo I sent you with the photo I gave you there with that Westport job where I showed you the T80, if you look off to the right, that's a graveyard of chambers that were in the ground before me. You can see they're black in the corner here. They're all dirty. They were done wrong. They were full of dirt. They were undersized. They were just poorly installed. We yanked them out of the ground and did things right. So that's the story with Coltech chambers. It's like anything. You really need to create a maintenance point. If you don't have a maintenance point, it's only a matter of time until these chambers are inundated with solids, and the only way to remedy that is to dig them up and do them again. Can I answer any questions at all? Yes, sir. So, and I mentioned all that Greenwich jazz in the beginning because I find it to be important. Their pace is every 5 years. What we find is, now they have what they call the Town of Greenwich Stormwater Manual. I think you guys you could pull it down readily online. It's right on their website. It's very well done. It's been rewritten a few times, and it's thorough. In that maintenance plan, again, every 5 years it needs to be inspected by an engineer, but per the plan, you should be doing maintenance multiple times a year. So we have clients that are on retainer, and they're just like, oh, we don't want to call you, just do it. Come out twice a year, open up every basin, suck every basin out, send cameras down, make sure there's nothing in my pipes, just get it done. Is there a project or locations in general where you have spot complications that I could maybe troubleshoot in discussion? Moving forward with new design, the idea is put these stopgaps in place, catch basins, T80 storm filters, and then have them maintained at least once a year. Twice a year is great. Just like cleaning gutters. It's the same stuff, the same debris. The same junk you get in a rain gutter or a trench drain across your driveway is the same stuff we're contending with in our detention box or catch basins. Twice a year is usually a very healthy plan. You brush your teeth twice a day, you clean these boxes out twice a year.
So the repair, so here, it's not repair, it's replacement.
It's replacement, and yeah, it's basically a redo. It's a redo. And oftentimes we're engineering. Now, the other thing to be mindful of, the weather keeps changing. So we keep changing our engineering, right? We keep redoing our calcs. Right now we're calcing to a 25-year storm, 6.24 inches of rainfall in an hour. Like the ability to capture that and infiltrate that, that's way up. The town of Greenwich themselves, we're doing this privately, right, as a private business, but the municipalities are upscaling all of their data too. So the data continues to change, and it's becoming water world. We're getting more and more water. We know we're in this upcycle, right? 5, 6 years ago, we were in a terrible drought, but now we're in this wet cycle, and the numbers are crazy. You know, you have 2 storms in a matter of a month, and the rainfall is catastrophic. It changes all of our engineering. So keep that in mind too. So now if I go to dig something up to replace it, I might be putting in 40% more volume capacity in the system. So not only am I redoing it, but I'm drastically increasing the size, which runs up the cost. Yes, sir.
Yes, Frank. So I have the printout from Caltech here. Suggested maintenance schedule, it says monthly during the first year.
Yeah.
And then it tells you what action, what you should check. And then 1 year after commissioning, and then every third year. So this is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So for the whole life of the system, then, I mean,
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
twofold. Keep in mind, they're the manufacturer, right? So we have friendly, I see them all the time, right? We have friendly battles where they lean on me. They want to know what's happening in the trenches. You know, I push back on them and say, do you know where your chambers are? Do you have pins on a map that show where every system in the state of Connecticut is? And they don't know, right? And it's basically, all of this is septic system technology. They took septic technology and repurposed it for stormwater. To explain why they say every month, that's to establish a baseline. And we do that ourselves after we install. We go out on rainy days and we take a look at what's going on. That observation report's helpful. What's going on? How is the system performing? And then we get a baseline on how the chambers are doing in that particular location, because that house has particular type of soil. We get a baseline on how much maintenance it does need. The other element is how much debris are the trees in the neighborhood dropping. These are things you kind of get a rough idea on, but you don't know how clogged up those catch basins that are catching our solids will get. That's really what we're looking at. But then once we establish the baseline, it's annual to semi-annual for the most part.
and how long have this system been used in the industry?
I think, well, they just sold. Coltech was just bought by ADS. ADS is the largest drainage company in the world. They're a multi-billion-dollar business. Coltech, I think it's 40 years that
Oh,
these,
no kidding.
Yeah.
And,
but you know, relatively obscure 40 years ago, and then all of a sudden they started getting written into the specification. Coltech is basically like the Band-Aid of bandages. So if you're looking at a specification from an engineer or an architect, what should say stormwater chamber says Coltech. So they lucked out. I mean, that was a really important, pivotal piece for their business, and they were wildly successful because they got written into the specification. But that didn't happen until it was all, what you should study is MS4, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, 4, and it's all driven by the EPA's Clean Water Act. That is what is driving all of this. What we're doing with these chambers is collecting all the pollutants in the water to protect our drinking water. Phosphorus, nitrogen, any kind of bacteria from like bird poop that's in the gutter that makes its way down, dog poop on the yard, anything that's hazardous to ingest is getting captured in this, and anything that comes out of the overflow on these chambers is deemed clean water, and that could go to our streams and tributaries to drink.
what about like ice damming? Any problems?
You could see, and I've seen it in the 20 years I've been in business, in a tough winter where we have like, 10 degrees or below for a sustained period of time. It's usually like 2 to 3 days of that consistent. You start seeing icing first at the downspouts. It's warmer underground, so you generally don't see a lot of icing below. It happens at the downspout, ground drain connection. That could all be loosened up and remedied. We have, 4,000 PSI jetters, and we heat the water to 175 degrees, and we have ways and means, but you generally don't run into icing underground because we're deep. We're at the frost line or below it, and it's warm down there compared to ambient, where you're getting wind, chill, and you're affected by wind and outside temperatures.
For residential applications, do you have an alternative if there's septic in the area and you're not able to put in the drainage?
It's a great question. That's a great question. We still see up this way too. A lot of downspouts just go to daylight with a small extension on it to get it away from the foundation so that residence doesn't incur, flooding or any damage to the foundation. You do have to be mindful of septic systems, because if you do send the water close, you could wash those out and do damage. No, you're at a loss. I put that on the engineers that you know, handle sanitary to take that water and send it somewhere else. Well, one alternative to stormwater with chambers is to capture that water in driveways. Pervious pavement is one option. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan because it works today when I put it down, but in a year, it's full of sand and garbage from the environment, and it clogs the pores on the pervious pavement, and the water can't get through. But they also do drainage in driveways by digging and applying multiple layers of stone, gradually smaller and smaller, and then you have a driveway that you could drive on that will accept water in a flash flood or surge. So that's one way to put, one place to put it. With approval, town approval and wetlands approval, sometimes we see water pumped and sent to a creek nearby, or, you know, a body of water that they let you do, you know, send the water to. Greenwich makes you treat it. Treatment means through the Coltex first and then out. But I've seen these chambers installed within a matter of feet from like a pool, no damage. If the system is installed right, it'll hold the water. We create an outflow, you know, an overflow. In case we reach capacity, the water gets out. That could be a pop-up emitter on the other side of the yard away from the septic system. There's so many ways to skin a cat.
Any further questions from the commissioners?
Sure.
In a subdivision where you had to get rid of the water because they're let's say quarter acre lots, you know, there's no room for can they compromise, say, put one drain down, pick these up, and send them down to one of these systems?
We see them shared often.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see builders put 3, 4 houses up.
Right.
It's all what the town approves, but we do
Right.
see that oftentimes it's a shared system, absolutely.
Right, because sometimes there's just
Nowhere
no
to put it.
room.
Yeah.
Okay.
That actually, a lot of times
Right.
will change the approval process, you know? You can't put the water anywhere. Sorry, you can't build 3 houses, you only get
Right.
1, or, you know.
Well, if there's no further questions, I want to thank Mr. Hennigan for a great presentation. We learned a lot,
Yeah.
Great.
and we really were interested in you coming. We're very
You're very
glad you
welcome.
did. Thank
We're
you.
We're on the other end of the phone if anything
Yep.
pops in the future. But
Thank
thanks
you
for
very
having us.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, we'll move into our next thing, old business. Application 2022-23, clear cutting inland wetlands and upland reviewer without benefit of a permit. Is Mr. McAllister here?
How you doing?
Hi.
So I guess I was called here again. I was trying to reach, I guess, Kelly. I called Kelly a few times, and then I called Maureen 7 times to set up the perk test, or the B100, to see if we could put a septic system in the property. She called me back probably like a week and a half ago. I even emailed her. I had my attorney reach out to her, so it took a little while for her to get back to me. We just got the test done today. So we have the results coming in, so everything else will be detailed on the plans that we first submitted before. I guess Kelly had a few questions that needed to be answered, and the only way to answer them is to have the test that we got done today, and now we're done. So hopefully I'll have that within the next week, so.
So do you intend to have your materials for the April meeting at this
Yes,
point?
I
Because
am.
it's been a few months where we've been told that you'll have them for the next month.
I can even show you the printout of how many times I've called the town. I reached out to you many times too. You never called me back. I didn't know where to go, to be honest. I just kept calling everybody. I even had to stop down. And again, I know it's not your job to answer my phone call, but I didn't know where to go. I told you this is my first time dealing with the inland wetlands ever. So I'm new to this. You know, I've been building in Stratford for 30 years, but I've never had to deal with this before. So Maureen finally got back to me after I was like, please have her call back. I called her 7 times. I told that to the secretary. She called me back probably like, I think 3 or 4 days later, and then scheduled for today for the inspection for the B100. So I should hopefully have everything set by the end of this week, hopefully, or this week coming up.
There was some discussion about leveling a fine against Mr. McAllister. I want to ask the commissioners what they think at this point.
I think that it's very important that we do. Look, seeing the nature of the violations and how long it has dragged on. That's it.
Anyone else? What do you think?
I think at least a minimum fine, if anything.
Everybody feel the same?
I would think twice if there's progress being made, that we can give him another 30 days if there has been.
As we heard from Dr. Chess,
That was,
thank you.
that was Dr. Chess saying that he should be fined.
So I would support postponing a fine for 30 days if we know that progress is being made. That's my comment.
All right, I guess the only way to do this is to put it to a vote. Who wants to level a fine?
I would level a minimum.
All right, who doesn't? All right, so the ayes have it. Mr. McAllister, the maximum fine we could give you is $1,000. I'm gonna ask for a $500 fine.
Okay. And what am I getting fined for exactly?
That would be clearing your land without the benefit of a permit.
Well, we talked about it's not in the wetlands, right? So this isn't for being in the wetlands, it's for being near it?
It's in the wetlands and the Upland Review area.
But not what we cleared. So what we cleared was already on the previous map that I gave you. So
Based on the site walk that I went out with you, there were wetlands cleared in addition to the Upland Review area.
no, because that's not possible, because I have videos, and I can send you the videos, and I can send you the pictures. I did nothing that was outside, that wasn't already done. And they already said it, those logs were there for a very, very long time. You can talk to the neighbors. I even talked to the neighbors. They said they already cleared it before me, before I even got there.
I'm sorry, but I was on the property. I saw it was recently cleared.
You only went to one section. I was with you the whole entire time.
Yeah, we went through the whole property.
No, we did not go through the whole property. The whole property goes beyond. You only went down that one right side. There's a whole left side as well, where the proposed house was supposed to be. We never even went that way. We went straight down on one side, which was already cleared previous before me.
Yeah, the right-of-way for the utility corridor is cleared, but that's unrelated.
Not talking about that. I'm saying if you go straight down the hill, if you look to your left-hand side, all those trees that were taken down had nothing to do with me. And the only way to get a machine down there to clear that is to have that cleared. So there's no other way to get on the property.
I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm not arguing, I'm just talking.
Okay, all right.
I know I'm right because I have videos and everything before
All right.
any machine got in there.
Sorry, Mr. McAllister, that's the ruling of the commission. I'm sorry that you feel that way. We have to rely on our experts, so, you know.
Not the video, right?
I don't know. Did you see a video? I don't know.
I can send everybody videos.
I did not see a video, but it was very clear when we walked it together, and you had your tail between your legs. Like,
My tip-
please.
I don't, a $500 fine is not gonna hurt me, and I'm not trying to be rude, but it has nothing to do with that. I have the video showing that I did not clear that other section.
So
Even
what
if-
was all the recently cut vegetation?
The only thing is to get down to the property. That's what I tried to tell you from the beginning. So if you think about it, it's one long strip, and anybody else, even you can go to the neighbor next door. They don't know me. They're not my friends. They even said they were cleared before I even got there. I have no reason to lie about this. I'm not, like, $500 isn't gonna kill me, but it's just the fact that I don't want you guys thinking I'm doing something I'm not doing. If I knew, like, if I didn't supposed to have a machine down there, I would've never had a machine down there. I had no idea. I hired a tree company. I said, hey, go down there and just do a pass so we can see what we have down there. That's all it was, and that was on the straight path from James Farm down to the property. So it wasn't like I was like, clear this whole thing. I had nothing to do with that. There's not even stumps like that in the ground. There may be like, from maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, before I had it, not from when I did it though. Like I said, all I want you guys to know is I'm not doing this like I just don't want you guys thinking I'm like that kind of guy that goes up there and just knocks trees down and stuff like that. Has nothing to do with it. I'm not like that. So, all right, so I'll pay the fine. That's fine. So where do I pay it and how do I pay it?
Okay, and you'll be able to submit the application materials by the first Wednesday of the month? Great, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Okay, next order of business. application 2022-9, construction of single-family dwelling and associated infrastructure. Counselor, could you please state your name and address for the record in case you're unknown to the commissioners?
Thank you.
Dr. Chess, are you hearing okay?
Thanks, Barry.
Nothing's happening right now.
We could have did $1,000. We could have did 1,000, did 500. I'm sure you saw what you saw and you're correct.
Good evening, ladies, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott and Dunn with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. I'm here on behalf of ProTech Home LLC of 640 Shelton Road, Trumbull. I want to make reference to a folder of exhibits which I've handed to each of you and to which I'll be making reference during the course of my presentation. Exhibit 1 is an 11 by 17 version of an improvement location survey, topographic survey, and site plan dated December 30th, 2021, revised to February 22nd, 2023, which revisions incorporate some of the issues that Kelly had wanted answers to. Exhibit 2 is a copy of the assessor's MetroCog map showing the location of the lot with respect to other properties on Cook's Pond. This is an 18,380 square foot lot located in an RS3 single-family zone across the street from the houses that are on Cook's Pond. The parcel is currently vacant. However, a single-family residential house had existed on the lot up until at least 2013, when it was raised by a former owner. Exhibit 3 is an aerial photo of the site taken in 2012, showing the location of the pre-existing house. Fast forward to 2020, and you'll see Exhibit 4, which is an aerial photo of the property taken in 2020 when no house was located on the site. My client bought the property on February 18th, 2021. Sanitary, sewer, water, and electric service are available on Circle Drive. Proposed improvements to this property include the construction of a 2-story, single-family residence with a paved driveway between the residence and the street line. Exhibit 5 is a copy of the architectural plans for the proposed colonial-style house, and the proposed activity includes removal of soil and ledge, the regrading of the area of disturbance, and the construction of the referenced single-family house, which is being built on spec for resale purposes. According to the soil report, there are no on-site wetlands at all. There are no off-site alterations proposed. All land disturbance will be within the parcel boundaries and protected by soil and erosion controls as detailed on the proposed site plan, which is your Exhibit 1. Primary stormwater management treatment methods utilize the subgrade storm drainage and filtration system as shown on the site plan and as articulated by our engineer in the report for stormwater management system dated February 22nd, 2023. Now that report was updated from the original report that we submitted with the application in response to issues that Kelly had raised, questions that she had raised regarding details of stormwater management on site. So we provided that updated report to satisfy Kelly's questions. The system consists of a 30-inch deep stone bed under the proposed driveway. All remaining yard areas are to be loamed and seeded to establish good grass cover. And Exhibit 6 is a copy of the planting plan previously submitted to Kelly. Now, the storm system will accommodate the theoretical storage volume required by the town of Stratford and to comply with Connecticut DOT MS4 requirements. This proposed activity is in compliance with all Town of Stratford zoning regulations and is a permitted use in the zone. No variances are being requested or are needed for this construction. Due to the parcel's location, there is no apparent impact on off-site wetlands. Therefore, I would ask for your approval this evening. The off-site wetlands being the edge of Cook's Pond on the other side of the houses across Circle Drive from this property. A fairly substantial distance from this proposed location. And that completes my presentation. Kelly had raised a number of issues during the past few months. Our engineer had been unavailable to come before you on previous meetings for various personal reasons. He was able to get the updated information to Kelly, which is reflected on the revised site plan, a copy of which you have in front of you, and which is also available on the updated storm water report dated February 23rd. So I won't speak for Kelly, but I do believe that we have responded to all questions she had regarding this application.
That is correct.
Does any commissioners have any questions of Attorney Knott? So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Before we get into the next thing, I'm just going to use the restroom in 2 seconds, okay? You're going to use the restroom? Yeah, you want me to take a recess? You want to? Yeah, I want to use it.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay, you want to take a recess or you want to just?
Yeah, if you want to just take a pause, because they have to get set up.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess while the next applicant sets up. Anyone wants to stretch their legs or anything? Next order of business, new business. I'm reading the wrong thing here. Wait a minute. Mountain Development Corporation. State your name for the record, sir.
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC, offices at 10 Saskill Hill Road in Fairfield, here on behalf of Mountain Development Corp. We're here because, as I'm sure you likely recall, we were here on an application for 99 Hawley Lane with regards to the construction of, or the proposal to construct a apartment building on that property. That was subsequently denied by this commission, and my client took an appeal of that denial. So tonight we're here before you in the hopes of presenting to you and offering to you a proposal for settlement of that pending litigation, and obviously talk about what's being proposed, answer your questions about it as best as I can, being an attorney and not an expert in some of the plantings and things like that that will be mentioned. But do appreciate you granting us this opportunity to come before you and present this. Even though I know you're probably remember that application from a few months ago, just to kind of go back and highlight it, and even really kind of go back further with this property. As you all know, it's a very large site. It's about 34 acres, and it has 10 acres of wetlands, which is down in this corner of the property. The property has been developed, and there's been plans for development for decades. It was originally planned as a multi-phase development, going back as far back as 1985. Some of those phases were built. Obviously, the existing building, office building, that's on the front portion of the property. Some of those phases were not. There was 110,000 square feet of office building that had received approvals back in 2003, and that was approved by Inland Wetlands. It was approved by Planning and Zoning, but the markets and certain circumstances led to that phase not being built. Over the years, it kept being revisited. There was a lot of discussion with the town attorneys about what approvals were still valid. There was a letter from 2017 from Attorney LeClaire at that time, that when he was requested by Jay Hibansky, who is the the head of zoning now, regarding the approvals for this property, and he stated at the end of that letter that approval for the 110 additional square feet remains in effect, subject to the filing of a site plan in accordance therewith. So, just to kind of let you know how this project came up, the market for supporting the construction of 110,000 square feet of office disappeared. Nobody's looking to build that much office anymore. So we met with Jay Hibansky and with the town in trying to figure out what this phase could be reimagined as. And multifamily residential has obviously become something that there's a tremendous demand for, there's a tremendous market for. So when we talked about the scope of this building and what the proposal and what would be built, the number we actually used in developing these plans was the 110,000, because the town felt that was the number of square footage, floor area, that had been considered for the site. So that's just so you know where that number came from, the 110,000. It is from what had previously been approved for this site. The issue was that the regulations did not allow for residential in the OPD, which is the zone that this property is located. So in working with Mr. Hibansky, we submitted a text amendment to Planning and Zoning. And one of the things I gave you, which I think I've dropped on the floor, is that approval, which was You can see it's dated September 2021 to the approval for the amendment that would allow the residential in the office park district. And you could see part of that was that there was a condition that there would be 10% affordability. Affordable housing is obviously a hot topic, and there's a tremendous demand for that as well. And if you look under reasons, the reasons why the commission said they approved this amendment was because of their plan of conservation and development that had guidance for residential as a land use in the OPD zone, and that it was consistent with the recommendations of the Stratford Housing Plan. And having worked on that application, there was just a lot of talk that this site would be an appropriate site for a higher density residential, rather than some of the applications that have been found in areas that are less appropriate for that level of high density. So that's just to say that this is a project that we really have worked with the town from the beginning, and working with them on the regulation to try to come before you with this specific site plan for this development, which, just to remind everybody, was for the four-story apartment building, again with the 110,000 square feet of floor area, which was to contain 129 apartments, and add, there's actually existing parking here. In total, it would end up adding, it's roughly 267 parking spaces to support that use. The previous, it was 110,000 square feet again, that's where we got that number for, and actually it was 332 vehicle parking spaces. Regarding the impact on the wetlands, and we had some disagreement about that obviously, but just to highlight some points that we thought were important was that there would be no disturbance of the wetlands themselves, the 10 acres. There's 10 acres here, and then there's actually a smaller pocket way down there. That's just a 10th acre. And that there was no disturbance within 50 feet of the wetlands, but that within 100 feet of the wetlands, there was a portion of the building and then some of our grading and drainage within that area. So, in looking at that and talking with our engineer and our wetlands expert on what other measures could we take to really protect this wetland, the first was to expand the conservation easement area. And so what you see here on this plan is a proposal to expand the conservation easement in two areas. Right here on the western side, this is for an area of 10,440 square feet. This area is entirely upland review area. The other larger portion would be over here, which is 50,417 square feet. And not all of that is upland. You can see the 250-foot upland review line. It's not all upland. In total, between the two pieces, it would be 44,617 square feet of upland review area that would be protected by conservation easement, which is over an acre of additional area that would be conserved. I think the other important thing about this is what we did with expanding this is to match our limits of disturbance for this project. And one thing I think is important about that is it essentially says this is the end of the expansion of development on this property. Everything that is being used for within this, so there's going to be whatever's used in this area to the limits of disturbance, which will be developed, and then if it's not in that area, then it's not getting disturbed. So this commission wouldn't have to worry about, even though somebody would have to obviously come back before you, but you would know in perpetuity that we couldn't expand a parking area down here, or expand, there's a drainage system here, and then here's this conservation easement area, this area is a lot of ledge, I believe, and it's high grading, and that's why the limits of disturbance go to there, and there's like this small little triangle. But basically, it wouldn't be able to expand beyond these bounds. And then the only thing that somebody could do in the future, 30 years from now, when there's flying cars, is, you know, and somebody's totally reconceiving this property, was redevelop this area, but that this would be protected in perpetuity. So that was the offer to expand the conservation easement. And then today, I received from, and sorry that we couldn't get it sooner, I had wanted it sooner, but it arrived today, was this plan for a wetlands enhancement. And if I can just get, this is from George Logan, who was our consultant on the original application for enhancement and mitigation to the wetland and upland review area. The first is area A, which is wetlands. It's 9,750 square feet, and what he's proposing is for the mechanical removal of invasive shrubs within the wetland, followed by interplanting with wetland shrubs. His note on this was, again, that's within the wetland. It is the area that is most impacted by invasive plants. He's estimating for the plantings that there would be between 50 and 60 shrubs, about 3 to 4 feet in height. So that's for this area A that you see in blue. The next area is area B, is 14,750 square feet. His proposal, and this is upland review area, it's not wetlands, is for the mechanical removal of invasive shrubs and vines within the upland buffer, followed by interplanting with wildlife habitat enhancing shrubs. So again, his note on this was that this is upland buffer. It is the most impacted upland area with invasives, and he suggested that about 150 shrubs of the same size, 3 to 4 feet, be planted in this area, and along with a wetlands or upland seed mix for the bare spots. The next area is area C, which is 17,250 square feet, where he suggested the interplanting of wetland buffer with wildlife habitat enhancing shrubs and trees. His note on this was that this is upland buffer area. There's not as many invasives here, but he felt it could be enhanced with shrubs and trees. He suggested 120 shrubs and 30 trees, 4 to 6 foot trees in this area. And the other thing I would note too, which I think is with area B and area C, he felt that this was a good location for wildlife and habitat enhancing shrubs. I know in the original application during the hearing, there was discussion about the wildlife. There was a lot of back and forth about the wildlife. So he thought these two areas would be beneficial to add those types of shrubs. The final area, which is a small area right over here, closest to the building, area D, is 3,650 square feet. He proposed seedling with wildlife conservation mix and planting with clonal shrubs like gray dogwood. Regarding this area, he said it's a graded slope, and again, yeah, he suggested installing a seed mix as well as 80 shrubs of the 3 to 4 feet in height. That would be part of stabilization. And then regarding this plan, his suggestion would be that this plan would be monitored for a minimum of 3 years. My client has reviewed this plan and is supportive of it and asked us to offer it tonight. So that's what we hope. It's something that we feel, one, with the conservation easement, again, expanding the conservation easement area, adding over an acre of upland review area into that easement to be protected in perpetuity, but also taking it to our limits of disturbance. And then second, being the proposal of this wetland enhancement plan, this mitigation plan, which, you can see is basically like a buffer to this use, and in total constitutes over an acre of area as well. And that's about it. Happy to answer any questions that I can to my abilities, or take them and bring them to the people who would know how to answer them.
I just wanted to remind everyone that any discussion amongst the commission should occur in executive session because this is an appeal, but you're welcome to ask him any questions that you have.
I do. You were talking about, again, I'm looking at the map, my left side where you're talking about the parking here.
Yes.
That you'll never expand below what's already on the map. So now you're talking about 129 apartments, and you figure most apartments, you have a couple living there, so they would have 2 cars. So 129 plus 129 is 358, and you're saying that there's only 267 parking spaces? So would the other people be expected to park where the Merit Building is now, in that back parking lot?
Well, a couple things with that. So, one, when you do out parking counts for a development like that, the number doesn't come to 2 per apartment. And so what we're proposing as far as parking is in compliance with what the zoning regulations require. And so we had discussions with that as well when we talked with zoning. We proposed a text amendment to obviously make sure that the text amendment would allow this type of project to move forward. One of the things we talked about was the parking, and that with this, we would have sufficient parking under their regulations to meet their standards. The other thing, just to bear in mind, is that there is parking in this area as well. So we're adding these spaces, but there is, you can see it, it's in light gray, but there is a number of existing parking spaces here. It goes over to around here. So there's an existing parking area here. The ones that I'm talking about we're adding are the ones in dark black right here, which also includes a shifting of a few of them. But there's also these in light gray that would be available to the residents. One of the nice things about mixed-use properties, so obviously there's the office building, and then this would be a residential building. The shared parking analysis on them works very well, because the peak of the parking for the residential tends to be at night and early in the morning, and the peak for the office is during the day. So the regulations have shared parking standards with regards to that, and how you can calculate it. And so at night, when the office is, there's not as many cars here for the office use, there's a lot more parking for the residents to use, and vice versa. But this proposal is compliant with the zoning regulations.
I have a question.
In addition to that, does this also include visitor spaces as well?
Yes, that's the whole, it's all part of the calculation.
I want to caution the commissioners to keep your questions for the wetlands only. We have no purview over parking or anything else like that.
May I?
Sure.
The proposed conservation easement on both the left and the right side on the prints, what is the change there? Just the footprint of the building, or
Is not changing.
is not changing. Just the rules on these 2 pieces of property.
These
So
would be blocked.
the only change is the man-made rules surrounding it. The land will be exactly as it was when you first put forth the application. Is that correct?
Correct. The
Okay.
changes to the land really are going to be the wetlands plan, the mitigation plan, which we had
The
not
plantings.
planned on this. We had not proposed this at the previous
Right,
application.
okay.
So this is all new.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Joe?
Go ahead.
This revised proposal, mechanical removal of invasive shrubs. what's to say they're not gonna come back? Like, you know, I could pull crabgrass in my garden and it keeps coming back. So, in the long run, the invasives might come back and might crowd out the beneficial plants that are put in. So,
My understanding is that's the purpose of the 3-year monitoring. And so to make sure, so we would go in initially, would remove all the invasives, and then if in year 2 they came back, we would remove them again. And Mr. Logan felt that 3 years was appropriate to make sure that didn't happen. That would be a plan we would be held to. So even if we removed everything in year 1, but then we essentially gave up on year 2 and year 3, we would be in violation of that plan, and then you could come to us and say, well, you're in violation. You were supposed to do this year 2 and 3. He felt 3 years was appropriate. If the commission felt it was a longer amount of time was more appropriate, I'm sure we could agree to that. But he thought that was what was needed to make sure the invasives didn't return. Though I'm sure, you know, invasives can crop up, you know, anytime. But that, for removing these and making sure they didn't come back, that's what he felt was the appropriate time. Thank you.
Question on the area in general. Do you have an idea what the ratio is of how many trees you're going to be removing and cutting down and roots being pulled out versus what you're going to?
I don't know. The only thing, and I could ask him that, the only thing he told me with regarding removals was that that we would remove the invasives, and not removal of anything else or cutting of anything else. So I would have to ask him if there was anything beyond the invasives.
Okay. And again,
Sorry,
I asked it
don't know
because the rooting system, the trees play a very important part with drainage. I mean, this is, you know, and unfortunately, if we have drainage problems, it could wind up being just because of the root system and all the foliage and trees that have been removed.
Well, and I will say our engineer, Pat Rose, reviewed this plan and he said he did not see an issue in it impacting his drainage plan. So I do know that, but with regards to the removal of other trees and things like that, he said to me that it's particularly area A and area B. He said right now we're tremendously impacted by invasives, and that he thought that they needed to be removed. But I will ask him that question.
Any further questions?
Could you translate?
Yeah, so that was Dr. Chess. He's calling in. I apologize.
no worries.
But he was just wondering if you had made any alterations or addressed any runoff from impervious cover in the treatment train for that.
There's no change to our drainage plan. I know that. So there's nothing with regards to that.
Okay.
They still felt that our plan was sufficient to handle that.
Okay, thank you. He said that there was no change to any of the drainage plan at all in this proposal.
In this proposal.
Wait. Hold on one second. We can't have any discussion right now, except an executive session. So just questions only at this time. Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Was there another question? No. Okay. All right.
Any further questions by anyone? Kelly, anybody? Okay, maybe we'll go into executive session at this point. We'll go in the other room. Right, we should do that, right?
You can do that now or next month. You don't have to. Yeah, we can do it now. We can do it.
Let's go in there now, if you want. Then we'll. Okay, we are out of executive session, 8:48. The commissioners felt, and so did I, that there's many unanswered questions, and we're gonna have to table this till next month. Kelly's gonna prepare a list of different things we need, and we'll revisit it at that time. That's the best we could do right now. So,
That makes total sense, Chair,
get a
Commissioners.
motion to table?
Motion to table.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And you could work with her, and she'll get the information we need, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Appreciate it.
Counselor. What's next? Okay. Next is staff report, I believe. Kel? All right. Where'd my thing go? My agenda. Oh, yes, next order of business, staff report.
All right. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up. It crashed on my computer while we were in executive session. All right. So we are still waiting, reviewing the performance bond issue with Attorney Sullivan, so no new updates on that front. And then I just have 3 applications that I handled administratively. 2023-4A, a porch and deck construction at 309 Hickory Woods Lane. 2023-2AM, which was a modified administrative permit for septic system repairs at 945 Beaver Dam Road. And 2023-5A, which was a trench excavation within the upland review area at 200 Orinoke Lane. And that's all I have. Oh, yeah, sorry, I went right into that.
We'll go to Commissioners Forum. Anybody want to say anything? Commissioners?
Did Mr. McAllister ever submit a map of the property and what was cut? Yeah, I'm still not clear on that. Like, is he saying that he didn't cut that? And if he didn't, then who did and why, I just...
Yeah, I'm kind of perplexed as to why he waited until today to claim that he didn't cut anything, when every discussion I've had with him, his engineer, and his wetland scientists have been about what he has cut, so I don't really understand. I'm guessing he was faced with a fine, but I will say I do not have a map. He has not prepared a map showing what he has cut. He has shown me maps depicting the wetland boundary, though.
Because I can't understand why someone else would clear-cut wetland on, or in a review area that is on his property.
What I was picking up was that he was trying to say it was done before he purchased it, but then he kind of went against that and said that he did hire someone to come and clear a path in, so I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not fond of fining anyone, but I think in his case it was deserved because he had many chances. And Kelly was out there, so, we got to go by what she says. And you can see he got pretty defensive. But like I said, I'm not really in favor of fining people, but in this case, I think it was warranted.
Make a motion to adjourn?
All right, that's all we got, Dr. Chess. It's a long phone call for you to be on.